What is up, everybody? Welcome to another Build a Mind podcast. I'm your host, Trevor Bello. Today is the first recording of 2025. It's going to be a very bullish year. I am super bullish on the trajectory and where this podcast is going, where I'm going personally in my own life. I'm just really excited. By the time this comes out, it'll be, kind of a couple weeks into the new year. But like I said, it's an exciting time to be a Bitcoiner. It's an exciting time to be alive, really, with all the things that are happening within the political system, within the Bitcoin network, and within our own lives. It's very exciting. And when you can kind of pull yourself out of the tedium and the scarcity or the scariness of what life is doing, you can look at it and say, oh man, it is really exciting to be alive today. So what we have today, what we're going to be talking about on today's episode of the Build a Mind podcast is pretty exciting. We are going to be talking about pool heaters, heat reuse, and we've got Nicolas Drouin from Constellation Heating to talk about what they're building, the Constellation network, and their pool heaters that can do. They're basically a DIY plug and play. Not a DIY, I apologize. They're a plug and play system that you can purchase from Constellation and plug it into your pool heater and just start hashing right away. So Nicolas, pretty cool dude. Nicolas has a mechanical engineering background and started his career in the oil and gas industry as a maintenance and project engineer. After about 10 years working as an engineer, he pivoted to finance to do mergers and acquisitions and project financing in the energy industry. He led the financing of a $3.2 billion wind farm project, secured over $100 million in financing for RNG plant development, and was part of a deal team on many electric utility transactions. Over the last 2 years, he worked on a Bitcoin personal project, using his very special skill set. Constellation Heating was born about a year and a half ago, and its mission is to help onboard as many people as possible with Bitcoin by developing plug and play machines that reuse wasted heat from mining to daily applications. So, as you guys know, I am a heat punk. I love to talk about heat reuse projects, and I think this is something that a lot of people are going to be excited about, just because not a lot of people are like myself and want to just go in and DIY and figure out how to build it from the ground up. Some people want to do heat reuse and mine Bitcoin and not have to deal with the mundane or the expanse of installing these systems. They can get a little bit cumbersome. They can become a little bit of a headache. And when you don't know all the ins and outs of all these different systems that go together to build it, it can be a little daunting. So Nicolas has built an incredible device that takes all of that tedium, all of that daunting work out of it into one plug and play system. And I'm really excited to talk about it today. Before we talk about it, I've got a couple of things that we want to talk about here. I'm going to show you the first one right now.
Join the Mastermind Club, a weekly gathering of Bitcoin miners sharing insights to help you optimize or build your mining business. Our community fosters open discussion and collaboration, connecting you with experts who can help you overcome challenges and find solutions faster. Every other week, we host the Mastermind Deep Dive, where industry leaders delve into the financial, operational, and optimization hurdles faced by miners like you. Brought to you by Bitcoin Mining World.
All right, join the Mastermind community today. It is absolutely free. It's a fun way, an exciting way to dip your toes into the water of Bitcoin mining, the ecosystem. Whether you're an industrial miner or a beginner, it's a great place for you to learn, grow, and network with like-minded individuals. Now, I'm going to hide that. We're going to get rid of that. Now, the next thing I want to tell you guys about is the Heat Punk Summit that is coming up in or in December, in February. So the Undermine Heat Punk Summit is a groundbreaking 2-day conference dedicated to the rapidly emerging field of hash rate heating, harnessing Bitcoin miners to power electric heating infrastructure. We're undermining the status quo. Mining doesn't have to be centralized in pubco mega facilities or massive mining pools, and home hashing doesn't have to be exclusive to the ideologically motivated. Instead, we can bring mining to all via heating appliances, very similar to what we're going to be talking about today. So join us in shaping the future of energy and Bitcoin at the forefront of this exciting new industry. Join us Friday, February 21st through Saturday, February 22nd in Denver. I'm going to share the link to this real quick. So the link at the bottom of your screen, and I'll make sure it's in the show notes as well. Go over there, get your tickets. I think it's like 100,000 sats right now for your tickets to that event. It's going to be a very good, very fun event, and I will be there along with a lot of the other heat punks as well. So, and yeah, with that, let's bring up Nicolas. Nicolas, welcome to the Build a Mind podcast. Thank you for being here today.
Hi, Trevor. Nice for having me. Good to meet you.
Yeah, it's good to meet you too, brother. So we've got a packed episode, man. Like I've got a lot of things that I want to cover, I want to talk about. You are doing some incredibly cool stuff with heat reuse, and as I mentioned before, I am a heat punk. I love the two worlds of Bitcoin and heating that have come together through Bitcoin mining. It's a lot of fun and it's exciting. As you know, it is a lot of work. There are a lot of different moving parts that you have to bring together to build a business. But as of right now, I think you're one of the only people who are currently building a plug and play solution for the space.
I think you're right. I mean, I've seen a lot of DIY, like people. This is how I started, just scrambling around with different parts, trying to make a system work, and then people are asking me, can I buy it? There's a big difference between doing a little project in your basement and doing something that you're confident enough you can sell to someone and it's gonna work. So yeah, there's not many. Well, the idea was to really add to something easy for the user, so that as many people can get on board Bitcoin mining without even maybe knowing they're mining Bitcoin behind.
Yeah, definitely. We need to lower the barrier of entry for people getting into the space. It makes a lot of sense. So, real quick, can we, take a couple of minutes to just kind of go back in your history, back before Constellation was ever like a thought in your head, back when you were working in mergers and acquisitions? What was this transition that helped you get into Bitcoin, and then how you kind of came to decide like I want to build this business?
Well, actually, I started mining in 2016. I heard of mining in 2015, had some friends, they were involved in it, and actually started with Ethereum back then. So these guys, they were familiar with it, so they showed me how to do it. And quickly you realize when it was not an industrial scale mining farm. I mean, it was just something residential, but to the limit of my electrical panel. So it was fairly big, but quickly you find out that you need to manage heat. And so I have a technical background, but yeah, so I hooked it on the HVAC system. We made some automation, but it was not perfect. But quickly I found out that, there's something to do with that heat. The way we installed it, we never thought it would have been such a big issue. So we didn't build the system with heat reuse in mind. But I always told myself, the next system I'm building, heat reuse will be like the cornerstone. I need to think of it from the start. And this is where I slowly, not slowly, transitioned to Bitcoin mining instead of Ethereum maybe in 3 years ago. And started working on that system since then.
Yeah, this is something that a lot of people a lot of people, everyone who starts mining Bitcoin or any other altcoin, they quickly realize that this is a resistive heater, and all of that energy that is, in the form of watts gets transformed into the form of BTUs or heat. And it's almost an exact conversion of watts to heat. And you have to do something with that heat, whether it's evacuate it out into the atmosphere or utilize it in ways that I've utilized it. There's a lot of heat. And so it's interesting that like you had kind of decided, well, I need to do something with this. So let's build a business around that.
I mean, it's when you think of like the big miners, like in the warehouses, they're doing on the industrial scale. The first thing I look at it, the first thing I'm telling myself is your byproduct, the heat you're producing, you're wasting it. To me, this is a source of revenue. You can help increase your P&L, or if you're a residential miner, if you reuse your heat, well, actually, you can lower your electrical bill, or you can, instead of heating your house with your typical baseboard heaters, well, you have Bitcoin miners who are already mining Bitcoin. So there's a lot of optimization that could be done. And I mean, removing the fans from the miners so that there's a quiet and managing the heat very well. I mean, I think for me, it's the easiest way to, you said it, lower the barrier of entry for anyone to come to
Yeah,
Bitcoin mining.
absolutely. And one thing I kind of want to quickly touch on is just the fact that there's a lot of heat, and for people who want to mine Bitcoin, like you kind of mentioned, these large pubcos, large industrial miners, Bob Burnett calls them, the horse facilities and the elephant facilities. They're really not managing this heat well. I mean, they're just trying to figure out ways of getting rid of it. But something that I noticed when I first started mining Bitcoin, and this idea that I've had just kind of like building on through these conversations, is that if you, like you said, if you can utilize that heat in some way, shape, or form. Tyler Stevens calls heat a product, not a problem, but it's very much like you can bolster your own business or build a different business where Bitcoin mining plays a significant role. And I'm kind of thinking of straight out the gate. I'm obviously thinking of, ranching and farming, these situations where a lot of times it's cold climates or harsh conditions to raise your cattle or raise your crops, where you can bring in these miners and bolster your revenue, like you said, bolster your P&L. What does that look like for businesses in the future when we have an ecosystem where everyone's mining Bitcoin? To me, it's an exciting new frontier to be in. And that's why I wanted to have this conversation with you today about Constellation, is because you've actually built a business around developing products for heat reuse. So there's so many different ways that you can build a business around heat reuse, and you've decided to go through and actually develop a product that makes it easier for people to integrate heat reuse into their businesses. So you've specifically designed it as a pool heater, but there are other applications that can be used for it as well, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. To my surprise, the main customer, I brand it as a pool heater, but most of my customers are using it for radiant floor systems. So for in floor, heating water or glycol system through your floor. So this is the main application. Pool is fine. I mean, pool is a very good application as well. The idea though is you want to use the miners 12 months a year. So
Mm-hmm.
that's another challenge. I mean, depending on where you live, I live in Canada, so we close our pool in wintertime because it's too cold. So what are you doing with your miners? So the way the system I develop is, well, you can just toggle a switch and you have a dry cooler. You're not reusing the heat, but you can still use your miner. The best system, the one I was mentioning before starting the show in Idaho, is uh, heating the pool in summertime and heating the house in wintertime, the radiant floor in wintertime. So that's a best situation. I mean, you're no wasted heat and you're monetizing that heat. So it's now just like Taylor likes to say, it's a product. It's not a problem.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so let's kind of dive into Constellation. There you have, when we first spoke, you talked about the reason why you named your company Constellation and kind of the ethos behind that. And so if you could just kind of explain
Yeah.
that to our audience.
I mean, maybe you can draw a parallel with the industrial miners. So their revenue source is obviously Bitcoin mining. They are wasting the heat, and they also have what is called a PP, or power purchase agreement, with
Mhm.
utilities. So they're monetizing the load, because it's a very flexible load Bitcoin, they are monetizing that with the utilities. When you look on the residential side, or small commercial, small industrial, what I want to do is, well, obviously monetize with the Bitcoin mining, so you get the Bitcoin reward. You monetize through heat reuse, so something you were previously heating with a gas heat pump or even resistive heating, now you can cut that expense. But connecting all those, miners locally and interact with the grid, just like a big industrial miner can do with its PPA contract, it's not possible for residential, because only one miner cannot, really interact with the grid. But what if you connect all of those heaters together in a location? Now you have enough power consumption to interact with the grid, just like the big industrial miner can do. So this is why I named Constellation. This is the company I named it Constellation. This is not the end goal, but we are, quickly working towards building that network of heaters that can eventually interact with the grid. And I mean, that benefit will go directly to the customer as well.
So you're specifically talking about like demand response, whereas these large.
Yeah, that's right. There's many names: demand response, flexible load. But yes, you're right.
So let me just kind of get this straight and like play it out for the audience a little bit. You're talking about, individual miners connected through a constellation network. Let's say we'll just talk about like the city of Colorado, Denver, Colorado. Let's say you have 500 different homes using these miners to heat different applications in their homes. You're talking about, say, the city of Denver needs electricity to go towards other things. These miners would be able to speak to some sort of interface and then shut down like together in order to send that power back to the grid. Whereas one miner in Denver doesn't really do much, but if you had 5 to 6 to 700, it would make a big difference. Is that kind of what you're talking about?
You said it perfectly. I mean, it's just how we see it. It's a opt-in or opt-out. So you have the machine. If you opt in, that allows us maybe 2-3 hours a day, because typically the utilities, they need power early in the morning or at lunch, or in the evening. So 2 or 3 hours per day, we can take control or modulate the machine so that it will either shut down the machine completely or reduce it. With our heater, we can modulate. It's not an on-off mining cycle, so you can modulate those, and all the powers that the utility can now has available because the miners are not consuming it. Well, that has a value, and the utilities are willing to pay the companies doing the flexible load or the demand response. So that money will go back to the customer in order to lower the cost of operation even more.
Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense. In theory, has it been initiated in practice yet, or is it still something that's being built out?
No, so we just launched. Actually, we shipped our first unit last week, and now we're deploying. There's many on the assembly line, so we're deploying, and we are working on the platform that can interact. So we're doing some tests with the local grid here, just to connect it's called the APIs, or connect the software together so they can talk. And we hopefully will deploy that in many states. So we've started doing that in Canada, but the plan is to do it locally in every state.
Right. It sounds to me like this is something that is more of like a long-term vision, because it's going to take time for people to start integrating these systems in their homes, and you need a lot of these systems in each individual city on each individual power grid.
Correct. So you're right. It's not going to be done overnight, but the plan is over the long term. I mean, we're focusing, and there are some regions in Canada and US that it makes more sense to mine. I mean, someone in California, he's a Bitcoiner, he can mine, but at 30 cents or even 35 cents a kilowatt hour, it makes no economical sense if you take the Bitcoin price of today. But there are many other places where it makes way more sense, and we're focusing on those places. And thankfully for us, those places typically they require heat all year long, so they are cold places, and but not that hot. So in summer they need pool heating, stuff like that. So,
Mhm. Well,
but yeah,
well, keep shipping, Nicholas. Keep building out your Constellation network. I am excited to see, this kind of stuff this happen, because the more that we can educate people, the more we can onboard people, the more we can show people that these systems work for them, the more we can grow this network. And then you've got like the power providers, working with individuals in their homes. And I'm kind of likening this to like solar power. People install solar on their homes and they get to sell that power back to the grid if, they're not utilizing all of it. It's kind of a similar situation. They're going to be buying power and they can shut off and get a rebate when they're not using that power or don't need it.
it's the exact same thing. They call it net metering, I think,
Mhm.
for solar. And typically the utilities, they're not paying a lot for net metering, but it's different for miners in Texas. They make a lot more. They much more money than the net metering typically done with solar.
For sure. Awesome. Well, it's like I said, I'm really excited for, the next 5 to 10 years to see, kind of like follow you and see where you guys take this. Can we kind of dive into the heater itself? I know it's a pool heater, but it can be used for many different things. And I'm thinking of like specifically like the fog hashing immersion C6 or C2 tank, where it's hooked up to a dry cooler, it's hooked up through these pipes, and you just dunk your S21 or S19s inside of it. But you've kind of taken this a step further and integrated everything into one unit. Could you just kind of give us a breakdown of the unit and how it connects to a pool or a concrete,
Yeah.
radiant floor system?
So the core, well, obviously you have the miners inside. So the miners are inside of the box. What you also have inside of the enclosure is a titanium heat exchanger. So why titanium is just because pool, they have a lot of chemicals. Sometimes you have salt water. So in order for the alloy compatibility, it had to be titanium. So this is a pretty heavy duty heat exchanger. It's inside of the heater. So what happens is, or when you receive it, how you would connect it is basically you connect it to the power, just like your dryer. So it's a 240-volt electrical connection, and you connect to the water in and water out, and that's it. So when you turn the machine on, all the pool configuration is taken care of. There's many protections inside, make sure that nothing overheats, and in case it overheats, what it can do is it will eventually underclock the miners, or it can automatically send the extra heat to a dry cooler, just like a fog hashing system would have. But all that is automated. You don't need to have the dry cooler for it to run, but everything is packaged inside one box. So it's, all the trials and errors. You don't have to do that. And basically, the idea was to make almost abstraction of Bitcoin, just using Bitcoin as the technology behind it, or with the miners. But you don't have to be a miner to use this product. It's just you connect it, plug and play. You have Wi-Fi, so you can install it outside, close to your pool, and that's it. It's very simple to use.
Mm-hmm. It's a very straightforward setup. For the people who, like obviously most of the people listening are Bitcoiners, so they want to kind of get involved in some way, shape, or form. But talking about lowering the barrier of entry, we want to onboard people to this network through products like this. How do you intend to go about educating people enough to where they understand kind of what's going on behind the back end, so that they can collect that Bitcoin if they're mining it?
Yeah, well, actually, all of the Bitcoin collected by the machine goes to the user. So we have two models. One for people experienced with Bitcoin,
Mhm.
it's similar to a fog hashing system, but the heat exchanger is packaged inside,
Mhm.
and you can also have a dry cooler if you want. You can switch between the two. but you have full control of your miner, so there's no automation on this. But when you're using it for I wouldn't call it a critical system, but when you want to heat your house with your miners, maybe you don't want to have to check on them because let's say you go out for 2 or 3 days, you don't want to have to constantly check on your miners to make sure your house is still hot, or I don't know if you have animals, or you just don't want the water pipes to freeze, so you want to make sure it's still running. So monitoring everything by yourself is not very convenient. So this is why we created the fully automated version. So if there's a loss of power or loss of internet connectivity, there's not much you can do. But besides that, everything will be automated. So
yeah, one thing, I had Nico on the podcast. He built a hydronic boiler heat reuse system in his house using a fog hashing C2 tank. And one of his issues was that when the internet would cut off or the power would cut off and the system would come back online, the pumps would not be running so the miners would come on and the pumps would not kick on as well. So it was one of these things that he had to find a runaround about. And it was, obviously it's a problem when your miners heat up and then cool down and then heat up and then cool down rapidly in a short amount of time. It ruins it degrades the life cycle of your miners.
Yeah.
So, have you kind of like integrated this entire system to work? So if the system shuts down and then reboots, everything is working together in compatibility?
Yeah. It makes sure, like, typically every miner has a hash board, so it makes sure that all the hash boards are up and running. You make sure, like, okay, internet connectivity is there, the pump is running, there's no overheating, and pool connectivity, it's there. So yeah, it has a list of many checks, many safety features it goes through. If something doesn't work, it can reset itself if needed. But yeah, it's and that's a problem I used to have. With mining, I used to been heating my pool with that system for over 2 years now. But before the fully automated version, every day, first thing I was doing in the morning, looking at my miners. Okay, they're fine, they're good, everything is correct, and they're still heating, they're still hashing. But it's if you want to lower the barrier of entry, it's not realistic to think that everybody wants to do that like 3, 4, 5 times a day, look at their miners, because we got to be honest, this is what we're doing as miners. So we want to take that burden away from the user.
Yeah, we need to make it easy, plug and play. When you think about like a computer, like your laptop computer, you go to Mac or Apple, you buy a MacBook. Like when you set that computer up, it's almost like a 10-minute process to have your computer fully up and running. And you don't know, as a user, like a regular layman, you don't understand like the components and all the different interfaces that are playing to make it to where you have this beautiful integration of computing. Whereas, if we think about Bitcoin mining and trying to onboard the regular everyday person, we've got to figure out a way to make that interface as easy, as smooth as possible, that setup as smooth as possible, so that they're not constantly messing with settings, trying to configure things. If you're using regular heat in your house, you go and you set it to 74 degrees or whatever that you want it to shut off and come on at, and you're not waking up every single day. How do I, what's my heater doing this morning? No. So these are the things, the barriers that you yourself are trying to overcome in order to get these devices in people's homes.
Yeah, totally. And I would say maybe the last step before we make a perfect abstraction of Bitcoin is, for now, the only option you have is you need to put in your wallet address so you get the Bitcoin payout. But we're working on a solution with that you can just receive an e-transfer every week. So most of the people, they want to keep the Bitcoin. Once they know what Bitcoin is, they want to keep it. But if you, I would say, you want to go not mass market, but for everyone, that could be an option. That's something we're looking at.
Yeah, I'm going to bring up Tyler Stevens again because he's such a great dude, and something he mentioned to me on our podcast together was eventually there's going to come a time where you can go into a Home Depot and you need a new water heater. You go into Home Depot, you're looking at water heaters, and there's going to be a regular water heater and a smart water heater. And the only difference is that the smart water heater mines Bitcoin and needs an internet connection, but it's not going to say Bitcoin mining water heater. It's just going to say smart water heater, and you're going to pay probably a premium for it or something like that, or maybe you even get a discount, and that money that it generates is going to go somewhere, whether it's to the user. Probably wouldn't be to the user, it would go to like the manufacturer at that point, and you would get a rebate because you're mining and using the heat from the Bitcoin miner to generate the heat for the water.
Yeah, there's many. The more you can abstract Bitcoin, the less it becomes technical. The easier it's adopt for everyone can adopt it. So yeah, I mean, I'm building a solution, but I've seen other people doing the same thing. But the thing is, yeah, every low grade heat, I mean, can be powered by Bitcoin. I mean, we are crossing our fingers that the chip manufacturers for the mining equipment, well, I think they figured out. They just need to come up with a technical solution. But if you can increase the chip temperature for those miners, that means you can have hotter water, so you can unlock more applications. And the pinnacle would be like, can we generate steam with?
Yeah, I was just thinking of that.
We don't know. I mean, but then you unlock a way a bunch of new applications. That would be awesome. But yeah, it's hard to tell where it's going to be in 5 years. But for now, yeah, just pool heating, house heating, water heater. Those are great applications.
Yeah, and speaking of those applications, obviously, Bitcoin miners need to remove heat in some way, shape, or form in order to efficiently operate, and that's what you've done with Constellation. Now, your heater or your unit can be integrated into multiple different zones of a home. Can you just explain to our users how something like that is done? Obviously, it's designed to go heat your pool, but if you wanted to set up multiple different zones to, like, say, heat your hot water heater, heat your pool water, but also maybe you've got a driveway that you've got
Yeah.
a integrated radiant driveway system. Kind
Yeah.
of run that through for us.
Well, all that was managed external to the heater, to be honest. So what we do is we work with contractors. So
Mhm.
they are typical situation, I would say, is the customer is a Bitcoiner. Not necessarily familiar with mining, but he's into Bitcoin. So he has a project at home, either building a new house, building a new pool, has discovered our product online, and now is asking the contractor, talk to Constellation. Let's see how we can integrate this. So typically contractors will call us and we'll figure out a way to integrate that. But all the control is done externally, just like a regular electric boiler
Mhm.
typically is not controlling, the zones and all of that. So you have a separate controller for that. So we just integrate the Constellation heater into that system, but the control is done externally. But we can do many things. I mean, you can heat floors, you can heat different zones, but you just need to hook the right pumps and pipes to that. But everything is possible. The only thing you need is a minimal water flow constantly, because this is a big difference, and this is something people sometimes they try to compare our heating system with what there's on the market already.
Mhm.
So typically they would talk in kilowatts or BTUs as the heating power, but it's different. A Bitcoin heater is constant heat, whereas a natural gas boiler, for example, it's on off. So it will be on for a short period of time and then it will turn off, but it will deliver huge amount of power for that short period of time. A Bitcoin heater is not the same thing. So it's continuous heating. So you want to properly match the heater you bought, or the Bitcoin heater, you want to match it to your application. So that's a bit more technical. And this is where people typically they are afraid they're not going to select the right product. But again, If you have a 10,000 gallon pools or a 80,000 gallon pools, it's a different situation. So you just come up with the data, and well, typically with how people select the right product for their application.
Yeah. So you're walking people through this process and trying to help them figure out
Yeah,
that map.
yeah, and we're gathering data. To be honest, I mean, I've installed it on my pool, on a few pools at my friend's place, but in Florida it's different from Montreal, and Oregon it's totally different. So you need to consider many things. It's not like a natural gas burner, which is super powerful, that you don't worry, you'll reach the temperature you want for your pool. A Bitcoin heater, it's different. I mean, the power is limited. It's resistive heating, so it's not the most efficient way, but it's the most economical way for in many regions.
Yeah. So back to this console, the device that you've built. How many Bitcoin miners does it hold? Because obviously we're kind of constrained to the amount of zones that we can heat based on the amount of miners that we're using, because
Yeah.
each miner can only put out so many BTUs. So how many miners does it hold? And what miners specifically is it using?
It's 1 to 3 miners. So we have different versions. 1 to 3 miners. So the 3 miners, that would be roughly a continuous 50,000 BTU, I think. Yeah. So, or 12 kilowatts,
Mhm.
and you can modulate, I would say, from 8 to 13 kilowatts for let's say for a big system. And it takes a lot of power. So sometimes, well, people are limited by their electrical panel. So
Mhm.
three miners, that's 12 kilowatts or 60 amps on a 220-volt circuit. So that's a lot of power going through that heater. And yeah, so basically you decide. It's either you give us the water volume for your pool, or the square footage for your house, and where do you live, and we make the calculation, and we make sure you get the right amount of BTUs, or the right amount of miners for your application, because you don't
Mhm.
want to, unless you don't mind spending extra dollar for wasted heat. But typically we don't want to waste heat. We want to reuse all of it or most of it. So that's why it's important to match the model with the application.
Mhm. What model of miners are you guys using?
Oh yeah. For now it's Bitmains, so the
Mhm.
S19, S21s. Um, Actually, everybody who bought the heater bought with S21, so I was
Yeah.
quite impressed, because those are still very expensive miners, but
Yeah.
they're very efficient. But yeah, we plan to integrate. So the next phase we want to do is, we're kind of limited. The manufacturers now, what they're doing for a residential application, you need 220 volts. I don't see a lot of houses having like 600 volts power in the power inlet. So we're limited by the hardware we can choose from.
Mhm.
Something that is compatible with immersion, that has 220 volts. But for commercial and bigger system, industrial, we plan on working with a different miner. Actually, Watts Miner, we're looking at it. We're having discussion with them to integrate their product into our design. uh, Same thing, because they run on 600 volts, so it's easier to package for industrial application, but not possible for residential.
Mhm. So, obviously, we all know, anybody who's been in Bitcoin knows that these machines are constantly being iterated upon. They're constantly changing, and new developments are happening. So, what is Constellation doing about, looking at the future 5, 10, 20 years, about this change in the form factor, the change in the style, and the output of these miners?
Yeah, this is a risk. I would say this is a big risk of the business. What's going to happen? And people, they are asking me. I mean, we're early in the cycle now, the halving cycle, so this it's okay. But when we're going to be like 3 years into it, people, will they be willing to buy miners? Probably the miners will be cheaper then, but will they be willing to buy very expensive equipment and don't know what's going to happen in a year or two? So I would say I'm crossing my finger that Bitmain keeps the same form factor. I mean, we made the enclosure a bit bigger, so it's not a perfect fit for the S19 or S21. So they can change a little bit in form, and hopefully it will still fit. But that's, to be honest, that's a risk. And the ideal solution or situation would be like a miner or a miner, manufacturer, just like Block intends to do. Like they provide the chip, and you do basically what you want with the chip. So you can build your own hash boards, control boards, and you package them the way you want. So that's a good solution we're keeping an eye on, but it's not very mature. I think they told me they will be shipping their first chip in February of this year. So it hasn't even started. So it's hard to tell where it's going, but this is how I hope the market will evolve. Actually, hopefully we'll have that option. It's going to be a more complicated option, but for people like me, like packaging systems with mining chip, customize our form factor, customize our hash board, that would be a great advantage.
Yeah, that's something that a lot of people are looking forward to, is, when these manufacturers start to realize that there is a market to be had on the individual and the business application side, to sell these chips individually, so that we can manufacture. I mean, you think about a computer again. Going back to the home computing industry, you don't have one company that manufactures your graphics card and the fans and your cooling system and your shell. You have different companies that manufacture different parts, and a lot of times you can custom order everything. And so there's this huge hope in the Bitcoin mining space that 5-10 years out from now, you will be able to custom order your own PCB boards and custom order the chips, because you want a specific chip on a specific PCB board in a specific size and with a specific control board and all these other different factors. So I mean, that is a huge hope in the space. Obviously, the heat reuse space, not just what you're doing, is this idea of being able to build, like, what if we could build a 3-foot by 3-foot hash board with chips on it, where it's only one board, the same amount of factor of capacity as this S21 series, but just on a much bigger board. It's just these ideas. And so I hope that happens. Obviously it would be advantageous to your company as well, be able to get rid of these shells and the onboard unit, like the obviously you're getting rid of the fans anyways, but like the control boards, instead of having 3 control boards, you could have 1 control board. And so there's a lot of different like ways that this could move.
Absolutely. And I know they are, maybe they are already doing that with big industrial miners, but it's just the early beginnings, because when I look at their warehouses, it's like S19, just like the one we're using at home, but stacked like one next to the other, like there are millions of them. So it's not efficient for them. I pretty sure they would wish also that the form factor, you can get rid of the control board, is extra cost that you don't need.
So another thing that I'm thinking of, are you looking into hydro solutions versus the dielectric oil?
Dielectric is, I think it's good for residential. As I mentioned earlier, the hydro cooling, not sure there's a 240 volt system that's out there in the market. So for residential application, that makes no sense. It would be the immersion oil is quite expensive in the system. So that would be a nice feature. If we can just get rid of it totally, that would be nice. And go with hydro. But the problem is the hydro system now not really compatible with the home electrical systems. But all the I was mentioning earlier, the WhatsMiner, we're having discussion with them to integrate that for the commercial and industrial applications, and that would be hydro cooling instead of immersion cooling.
Yeah. There's a different set of problems and solutions that come with hydro versus immersion. Obviously, it's not a one size fits all solution. It's just different use cases for different products.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, what I like about immersion cooling is I come from the heavy industrial background, and using water to cool stuff. I mean, we do it. We used to do it, but it's complicated. You need to treat the water. You need to constantly watch over it to make sure there's no bacteria in the water, stuff like
Mhm.
that. So with oil, you don't worry about that. It's just you fill it with oil and you're good for many years. So I like this, but like you said, it comes with a different set of challenges. But it's I think for the future, the miners they will manufacturers they will all go towards hydro cooling. That makes sense. I mean, it's longevity of their chip. It's more efficient. So why not?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I want to take a couple minutes to kind of dive into some of the philosophical insights that Bitcoin mining will provide to the world. Kind of what are your thoughts personally on this? How is Bitcoin mining integrating into different aspects of the world, and how is it going to change the world?
When I okay, so I it's gonna be very philosophical, but I love it.
Please.
I mean, when you kind of integrate, to me, Bitcoin, and probably for you as well, Bitcoin is the most perfect form of money. And when you can integrate the most perfect form of money, like the plumbing, like how the system works, you can integrate that to the thing that is the most important besides the having the perfect form of money is like the power, the energy we consume every day. When you can integrate those two together, for me, it makes like a perfect system. It's a perfect equilibrium. It's the yeah, and then you add to it the a daily application. So it's just like heat punks in their garage heating or mining Bitcoin. It's like everyone, like with your toaster, with your heat water tank, with your heating of your pool. Well, every application, all so connecting the daily lives of people with a perfect form of money and balancing the grid, which is it doesn't seem like it, but it's a very complex task for the utilities. When you have all these three together, I mean, this is a I don't think Satoshi Nakamoto ever thought that Bitcoin could eventually lead to that, but I think this is the perfect application for technology like this.
Yeah. Do you think about Bitcoin in the sense that it was kind of like divine intervention, whereas, if Bitcoin would have been developed 10 years prior, or 10 years post, would we be able to still have the same thing? Like when I think about it, I think about the fact that like it came around in this time of need for us as individuals. And it's just almost like it was this perfect, immaculate conception of money, but then the way that it integrates into different systems, different parts of the world, it almost feels like there's something divine about it.
Yeah, absolutely. The timing, I mean, we often talk about a fourth turning. We need a change. There's something happening in the society. So it's just like having the nicest car when you don't have gasoline. I mean, it's totally useless. Would Bitcoin be like 10 years prior? Would we be ready to welcome it when, well, I don't want to say if everything is great in society, everybody's happy, there's no sense of a wealth gap or stuff like that. Bitcoin, you don't see the relevance of it, but now we see it more than ever. So yeah, like 10, 20 years ago, it takes time. I think the timing was perfect though to launch it like what over 10 years ago. It's a slow adoption curve. Well, slow, it's not that slow, but it gives time to people to adopt it, to understand it. And, if you want it to be mainstream and integrated in the plumbing of finance and the electric grid, then it takes time. So we're scratching the surface, but I think the timing is perfect. And it's like, yeah, almost like you said it, a divine intervention. It's I used to say to people that are non-Bitcoiner that Bitcoin is the greatest invention over the last 100 years, and they all think I'm crazy when I say that. I'm like, you'll understand. You'll figure out later.
Yeah, well, I mean, just the ways that I don't know if Satoshi Nakamoto understood this or not, or if they whatever group it was, or whether it was one person or not, if they understood the implications that this would have on society and the world. Because, yes, you think about money and you think about how it is one half of every transaction that we make in the world. That has a lot of relevance to the way that we live our lives. But then you add in the aspect of mining, the technology of it, and how that integrates into electric energy systems. And so you've got money, you've got energy systems, you have society and community, all kind of folded into one layer of Bitcoin. And then it extrapolates from that, and we build better systems, better societies, more efficient systems. And so to me, it's just this perfect confluence of all these different things working together to build a better world.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think anyone had the vision or who could have, anticipated where Bitcoin is today. I mean, the financial aspect, I think, yeah, it's there was a reason behind it, but all the mining, I think at some point in the Bitcoin Talk forum, Satoshi said something about like, oh yeah, you can heat maybe your room with your computer. Yeah, but I don't think he ever thought that. No, you cannot only heat your room. You can balance an electric grid with Bitcoin.
Yeah.
I don't think that's something you you can really forecast. And God knows we're gonna discover with either the Bitcoin Lightning technology, and all the technologies gravitating around Bitcoin. I mean, Bitcoin is a cornerstone, but it's going to unlock value and yeah, everywhere in society. It's just amazing.
I completely agree with that. The only thing that saddens me is that I don't think I'll be around to see it fully like emerge in the world.
No, but I don't. I mean, good question. Like electricity, if we had thought like 100 years ago where electricity would take us, I mean, I think Bitcoin is a technology as important as electricity itself. So where is it going to take us 100 years from now? I don't know. I'm just glad I'm part of it. We always think we're late, but we're so early in the game. So I'm just glad I can help people, adopt this technology, and just like you, like helping people discover this technology. So, but yeah, no,
Well,
we're just scratching the surface.
we are definitely just scratching the surface. And to your point, it takes all types. It takes the builders, the developers, the entrepreneurs, and then it also takes the users and the creators to help distribute this information widely to the entire world. Because that's the dream of every true Bitcoiner, is to have the globe, the entire user interface, be the entire globe working to create and secure this thing that we call the Bitcoin network.
Yeah, I mean it's amazing. It takes many skills at the beginning. I mean, it was the core developers. Okay, so if you're a core developer, you can understand Bitcoin. But then you add a second layer, you add Lightning, and then you add the miners, and then you add the heat reuse, and there's so much skills involved now that it's just impossible to track. I can't remember. I think it was 1 or 2 months ago. I saw a chart of all the major, I would say, contributors to the Bitcoin ecosystem, like the big companies, the wallets, the layer two system. The map was just infinite. I was like, impossible to track everything. So, and we're still just scratching the surface. So I can't imagine. It draws talent. I'm glad that at some point other blockchains were draining a lot of developer talent. I think Bitcoin it has not flipped. But I wish more talented developer would gravitate towards Bitcoin. I see this as a risk for the system. There's not many core developers knowing that can really work on the code. So I see this, but I mean, the breadth of talent gravitating towards Bitcoin. It's just good things that will happen with all those brains.
And to that point is, as more like my son is going to grow up in a world where it's Bitcoin and, hopefully Bitcoin only, but there's going to be so many more intelligent minds growing up in the system native to Bitcoin. And I think that will unlock a lot of that potential as well. So I'm very excited as to where this network is going.
Yeah, totally. And yeah, the more abstraction you can make. You said it earlier when you were talking about your PC. I remember growing up, I was putting my PC together. I was buying, the processor. I was buying the graphic cards. I was buying the RAM and putting it all together. I mean, kids today, they don't do that. I mean, they know how it works, but they don't know how the plumbing of the system works. And this is what I try to do with Constellation. Just give a little more abstraction over the Bitcoin network, so it's easier for everyone. And yeah, you want everyone on the network, so you want to make it easy for them to join in.
Absolutely. Well, I appreciate everything that you're doing at Constellation. I'm excited to see the growth of your company in this industry as a whole. I'm excited for the heat punk industry. I think that it's a burgeoning, it's a niche within a niche within a niche, and it's a burgeoning niche of great value. And so I'm very excited to see where it goes. One thing I want to ask you, and I ask everybody on this podcast is, what does Bitcoin mean to you? But before that, I want to say, thank you to all of the builders, to all of the developers, to everyone who is helping to grow the Bitcoin network. I mean, you yourself, Nicolas, I'm sure have spent a lot of time, a lot of energy, and significant amounts of money just to ship the first product. So, it's been a year and a half. You've been grinding away at building the system. So to you, I just want to say thank you. Thank you so much for what you're doing for the space.
Well, thank you for those kind words. Really appreciate it. I mean, it started as a hobby or a personal project, but it quickly grown into a business. And I mean, if I can help people joining the Bitcoin movement, that will be my small contribution. Thanks.
Yeah. So like I said, Nicolas, what does Bitcoin mean to you?
It's going to be super cliche, but for me, I lived it on a first-hand basis. For me, it's freedom. I remember back, I think it was in 2022, we had the Freedom Convoy in Canada, which is not so far from my place. I've had friends who had their bank account frozen. I've had friends who had trouble with the police here just because they were peacefully protesting. And right, I think that was in the winter of 2021, 2022. And in 2022, I was at the Bitcoin conference, and this is in Miami, and everybody was laughing at Canada then. I was like, and this is where I realized the importance of Bitcoin. I was like, okay, this is not something local. Even people from all around the world, they have seen what happened. And yeah, for me, Bitcoin is freedom. Bitcoin is sovereignty.
Yeah, that is something that a lot of my guests would say Bitcoin is. They have their own, connotations to that, their own like perspective when it comes to that. But really, I mean, the freedom to spend your energy and your time, which you trade for dollars or money, the freedom to choose where you put that and what you're going to do with it. I mean, for good or for bad, you are the one that should be able to decide where you spend your time and your energy. And that's kind of what Bitcoin enables.
Oh yeah, I mean, you kind of exit the rat wheel of, always have to. So you earn a dollar, you need to invest that dollar if you want to preserve that dollar. So Bitcoin can abstracts all this, and yeah, we're seeing it online more and more. Like people are getting asked a million questions because they want to, withdraw like $5,000 from their bank account. It's like nobody's gonna ask me those questions when I have my Bitcoin in my cold storage. So yeah, they are obviously they don't want us to to be part of the ecosystem, but it's my peaceful way to kind of protest against the current system.
Yeah. Well, I think, real quick, I just want to say this. I think a lot of people don't understand that when they put their money in a bank, it's no longer their money. So, I
No.
mean, the bank, for all intents and purposes, and you might not like me saying this, but the bank has every right to ask you all these questions about what you're doing with their money. Because once you put it in the bank, it is their money. It's not your money anymore. And so that's why I think Bitcoin is so vital, because we now have the ability to transfer money, our money, without having a central authority tell us that we can and cannot do something.
It's hard to grasp the implication of just this simple detail. There's no third party involved. It's
Exactly.
it looks, it's so simple that when you, for a non-Bitcoiner, it's like, what's the point? But this is the whole point. I mean,
It's a very large point. It's
yeah,
something that matters, and it's something that irritates me a lot when trying to communicate what Bitcoin is to people when they don't understand what money is on a fundamental level.
yeah. No, it's. I mean, we're not going to transition from banks and the current financial system overnight. It's going to take time. Maybe we never know. In 100 years, what's going to be the final picture? But to me, a picture where Bitcoin gives you that option. Don't have to do it. Don't have to go on the Bitcoin standard, but it gives you that option. I like that.
I completely agree. I completely agree, Nicholas. Well, hey, we're gonna wrap this show up. I think that we provided a lot of value to the audience, to when they're trying to think about how these heat reuse systems integrate into different systems and why they're so important and vital to the lifeblood of the Bitcoin network. I appreciate you taking the time today to speak with me and come on the Build a Mind podcast. Just real quickly, will you tell the audience where they can find you? I am going to put your website across the bottom of the screen. So anybody who wants to look into this pool heating system, go to constellationheating.com and you can kind of just take a look at it.
Yeah, I mean, all the information for the system we're building is on the website that you're seeing right now, or you can reach me on X, BTC_grid. This is where I post all the progress I make with the builds I'm making, the different models, or just the random thoughts that I have. So you can find me there.
Awesome. I will make sure that that gets put into the show notes for everybody who's curious. And I implore everyone to at least look at this system, because it is a very interesting take on integrating heat into your life, into your business. So if you're curious about it, just go on there. I'm sure that you can find a lot more information than what Nicholas has provided today. So if you guys like this episode, please comment, like, subscribe, share, all the good things. We appreciate your feedback. We appreciate you guys being part of the Build a Mind ecosystem. And I have a lot of really big things planned for 2025. So stay tuned. I'm super excited to do that. We may have some sponsors here in the future pretty soon. So it's gonna be really exciting. Thank you guys so much for being here today, and we will see you on the next episode of the Build Mind podcast.
Please note, the Build a Mind podcast provides information for general educational purposes only. This information should not be construed as legal, financial, or investment advice. We do not guarantee the accuracy or completeness of any information presented, and we encourage you to consult with a professional advisor, legal advisor, and/or financial advisor before making any financial decisions. The Build a Mind podcast and its affiliates are not responsible for any losses incurred as a result of using the information provided.